Almost everything the ancient world made is gone. Not damaged, not faded, gone, melted down, erased so completely that we know the greatest sculptures of antiquity only as rumors, as descriptions in old books, as marble copies of originals no living person has ever seen. The masterpieces themselves vanished. And then, once in a very long while, one of them comes back not from a tomb or a ruin, but from the bottom of the sea. On a hot afternoon in August 1972, a man on holiday was snorkeling off the coast of southern Italy when he saw a human arm rising out of the sand on the seafloor. His first thought was that he had found a dead body. He was closer to the truth than he realized. It was a body, just not a living one, and it had been lying there, in about 8 meters of water, for something like 2,000 years. These are the Riace Bronzes, two of the finest sculptures to survive from ancient Greece, and very nearly the only ones of their kind left on Earth. And the reason they still exist is the exact same reason they were almost lost forever. The diver was Stefano Mariottini, a chemist from Rome, exploring the water a few hundred meters off the little town of Riace Marina in Calabria. When he reached down and touched the arm jutting out of the sand, he felt not flesh but metal. Brushing away the sediment, he found not one figure but two enormous bronze men, lying together on the seabed where they had rested, unseen, since before the Roman Empire reached its height. He surfaced and reported it. What the authorities pulled from the water turned out to be one of the most important archaeological finds of the 20th century. What they are is simple to say and hard to believe. Two nude, bearded warriors, slightly larger than life at nearly 2 meters tall, cast in bronze around the 5th century before Christ, the high classical age of Greece, the same era that raised the Parthenon. One, called Statue A, is younger and fierce, his body coiled and aggressive. The other, Statue B, is older and calmer, more weary. Both once held a shield and a spear, long since lost, and both were made at the absolute peak of what human hands have ever done with metal. To understand why that matters, you have to understand what almost no one realizes about Greek sculpture. Nearly everything we picture when we think of it, the serene marble gods and athletes in the world's great museums, are Roman copies. The original masterpieces, the ones ancient writers described in awe, the bronzes by Myron and Polykleitos and Phidias, are essentially all gone. Because bronze was valuable, for 2,000 years, whenever a war came or money ran short, people melted statues down into coins, into weapons, into church bells and cannons. An entire civilization's greatest art was fed into furnaces, one figure at a time. What survives on land is mostly the shadow, marble imitations made for Roman villas. Full-size original Greek bronzes from this golden age? You could count the survivors on your fingers, and 2 of the very best were buried in the sand off the coast of Calabria. And they do not look like statues, they look like men who stopped moving a moment ago. The eyes are inlaid glass paste and bone, so they still seem wet and alert. The teeth of one are made of inlaid silver, glinting behind lips of separately worked copper. The nipples are copper too. The eyelashes and eyebrows were fashioned and attached apart from the head. Veins stand up on the backs of the hands. When the bronze was newly polished, it would have glowed with the warm tone of sunburned skin. This was not an attempt to represent a human being. It was an attempt to counterfeit one to make metal that a passerby might mistake, for half a second, for a living man. They were built using the lost wax method, a model shaped in wax over a clay core, encased in more clay, then heated until the wax ran out, leaving a thin cavity that molten bronze was poured into. Each statue was cast in separate pieces and joined with a precision that would be difficult even now. The walls of the bronze are astonishingly thin and even, and when restorers finally opened them up, they found something extraordinary still sealed inside the original clay cores, the actual earth of the ancient foundry, packed into the hollow bodies. That clay could be analyzed, its minerals traced, offering a faint clue to where in the Greek world these men were first cast. But the deepest question is the one the sea refuses to answer. How did 2 Greek masterpieces end up buried off the coast of Italy? The leading explanation is a shipwreck. In Roman times, Greek art was the ultimate luxury and the ultimate loot. hauled west by the shipload to decorate the villas, gardens, and forums of the Roman elite. A ship carrying these two probably centuries after they were made likely ran into a storm in the waters off Calabria. Sailors may have heaved the heavy bronzes overboard to keep the vessel afloat, or the ship simply went down. And here is the strange part. Despite decades of searching that stretch of seabed, no wreck has ever been firmly connected to them. Two of the most famous statues on the planet, and we still cannot say for certain what ship they sailed on or where it was bound. And this is where the whole story turns over on itself. The Riace Bronzes survived for one reason, and one reason only, because they were lost. Every comparable statue that stayed on dry land was eventually found by someone who looked at it and saw not a masterpiece but raw metal and melted it into something useful. These two escaped that fate by sinking. The ocean, which destroys almost everything, hid them so completely that no furnace ever found them. They were saved by the very disaster that erased them from history. The catastrophe was the preservation, which leaves the largest question of all unanswered. Who are these men, and who made them? Scholars have reached for the greatest names in Greek art, the Circle of Myron, the School of Polykleitos, even Pheidias himself, but nothing is proven, and it may never be. We do not know whether they are gods, heroes, or mortal champions. We do not know whether they stood alone or were torn from a larger lost group, perhaps warriors from a myth every Greek would once have recognized instantly, a story now completely forgotten. Two men, sculpted with enough skill to feel alive 25 centuries later, and we cannot state a single certain fact about who they were meant to be. Stand in front of statue A and look at the mouth. The lips are parted just enough to show that glint of silver, as though he is about to speak, or has only just drawn breath. Look at the eyes, one far better preserved than the other, still holding their uncanny wet gleam. Look at the raised veins along the forearms, as if blood were moving beneath the surface right now. Every detail was designed to dissolve the line between metal and man, and it works so well that visitors describe the same eerie sensation, the feeling of being looked at. Today, the two warriors stand in a museum in Reggio Calabria, in a climate-controlled room, mounted on bases specially engineered to protect them from the earthquakes that regularly shake southern Italy. They are cared for like the survivors. They are two objects that outlived their own sculptors, their own civilization, the gods and heroes they may represent, and the ship that was carrying them toward a future it never reached. So here is what the Riace Bronzes leave you with. They are among the greatest sculptures humanity has ever produced, and we do not know who made them, who they are, or how they came to spend 2,000 years on the floor of the sea. We only have them at all because they were lost, because the water took them before the furnaces could. Stand in that quiet room, and you are looking at two men who arguably should not exist, staring back at you with silver teeth and glass eyes. And the question becomes impossible to avoid. How many others were there, just as astonishing as these two, that never sank and so never survived? The Riace Bronzes are not only a miracle, they are a measure of everything else we lost.